Hello, everyone. Adam here, and welcome to another installment in the ongoing series "How I." Dot dot dot. So today I'm going to talk about how I quit drinking. Uh, those of you who know me know that I've been sober for a minute. I've been sober for let's see, realistically speaking, sober for eight, 8 or 9 years, a while. And previous to that, I was drinking. I had cut my drinking down to about once a week, and previous to that, I was a daily drinker. So my biological parents are alcoholics. My biological mom is currently in the hospital. My biological dad had a schizophrenic break with reality a few years ago, and has since been in a whole other world of his own, out of hospital at least. So living the dream life in Ottawa. So yeah, my biological parents are alcoholics. That's not an excuse for my own behavior. And as an adult, as a 41-year-old man, I look back and I think, okay, I'm not making any excuses for my behavior. I take full responsibility. However, there are societal and surrounding environment factors when you factor in people's behavior and how they picked up these bad habits. I picked up smoking from my dad and alcoholism from my dad. The kids emulate the parents, whether the parents are doing good things or bad things. That's just the way that kids are. So I started drinking at a freaking young age, probably 11, 12. I can remember having. So my dad at one point was into boxed wine, and I can remember my room being next to the kitchen and sneaking around with like a cup like this and just like go and being like, oh, it's awful. Oh, my head's spinning. I can remember doing that at like 13. I can remember having friends over and drinking like that. My dad used to go out of town a lot, and then, all bets were off. We would just drink and do drugs and hang out at the house. So I was a functioning alcoholic for a very long time. I got to the point where I think around 1920 I was drinking every day. And then I went into a phase where I was sport drinking and like competitive sport drinking. And I don't recommend anybody ever do this. But like as a business manager, I would, go out, bring a credit card, pay for my stuff, pay for everybody else's stuff. I would. Sport drinking to me was attempting to get blackout drunk. I did that in my 20s, attempting to get blackout drunk and finding new and creative ways to do that. So that's a really vicious cycle where you wind up pictures. You can still go on the internet and probably find pictures of me in, various states of inebriation, holding shot glasses in front of a toilet covered in vomit with walls covered in vomit. Lots of different things. I used to have this um, fight with drunk Adam and sober Adam. They would basically always be at war with each other, and it developed into almost two different personalities. And there was a point basically in my 30s, towards my 30s, like in my late 20s, where I realized like I'm gonna have to spend some time undoing this. And I wrote many songs about this. One is So Long 20s, which is basically about breaking up with past Adam, or breaking up with drunk Adam and past Adam. It's personifying my 20s as a female, or like a feminine version of myself, or an alcoholic version of myself, and then saying goodbye to it. Hello 30s, another song that I wrote where you can see the gears turning in my 20s. I had a few health scares. I've had a few near death experiences in my life, and seeing my parents rapidly declining made me realize in my 20s I don't want to be like my parents. Basically, I don't want to be an alcoholic mess my entire life. My mom has been an alcoholic for 40 years, as long as I've been alive. So she's in the hospital now, for example, and I've only seen her sober this last little while because she's in the hospital. So something that I would never do to my kids now, but I went sober before I met Desiree. I went vegan before I met Desiree. So people attribute attribute my veganism and sobriety to Desiree, which, whatever, if you want to give her that credit, it's not true, but sure. So how I quit drinking basically was I went down a path of like increasing the quality of my alcohol from like just generic Labatt X or like terrible beer into like Heineken. And when I got to Heineken, I went to Guinness. So I started trying to increase the level of quality of my alcohol, knowing that I'm gonna try to basically taper off my drinking. So that's the approach I took, and eventually I got to the point where I was drinking pretty expensive beer, and then I went to ciders. So similar to how I quit smoking, I was substituting an ever increasingly staged up quality to to ultimately quit. You might remember this. This is a practice of failing less, which has worked for me with smoking. So I tried it with drinking. So I switched at one point to ciders, and right before I basically completely stopped drinking, like the last few steps were ciders. So it was like ever increasingly expensive beer to ciders. And once I got on ciders, once you get a taste for cider, you don't want to go back to beer because beer tastes weird after you're stuck on ciders. Well, ciders and wine. So my last few choice drinks were like Keith's apple cider, and then Cabernet Sauvignon, like Cab, Merlot, the dark reds, and that was my jam. I loved Obsession by Ironstone, and that was about it. I dabbled in hard liquor for a bit, but I realized that I am so unpredictable on hard liquor that it was just a nightmare for me. So the last few times that I was drinking was what I actually wound up getting off of the apple cider as well and switched just straight into wine. And some people are lifelong winos or lifelong alcoholics, but for me, I tried to make it so like wine was. If I bought wine, I would buy one bottle. I wouldn't stock wine. So I knew that I had a problem, so I was like, I'm going to go buy one bottle of wine. And sometimes I would buy two, and then that was like a weekend. So how I quit was towards the end, I was just drinking wine, basically. And I would buy one bottle. And there came a point where it was like once every week. Then it was once a month. And then I had about a year behind me of like no partying, no binge drinking when I met Desiree. And I met Desiree, and I maybe drank, since I've met Desiree, which is, we've been together for 7 years, I've drank as many times as I can count on a hand. We had one drink on a cruise that we went, and we shared the drink together. I drank once when we first started dating. I got a bottle of wine. She got me a bottle of Aviation gin for my birthday one year, which was a big mistake because I thought I had some tolerance that I don't have, and gin is just hard liquor. Obviously, it was a nightmare. So what I've done at this point of being sober for, like, at least I haven't had, even that gin was like 5 years ago, and I haven't had anything to drink since that gin. So I don't think maybe a glass of wine. But how I have metered my drinking is I allow myself to drink once a year. So this last year, 2021 until now, I have not had anything to drink. So I know for the last 365 days, I have not even had one drop of alcohol. So if you can get to the point where you're at, failing less, like the way I've described in stages, increasing the quality, and then switching to different brands, something that's a little bit more trickier to get, or then allowing yourself one bottle of wine and then going from 1 week to 1 month. And so my approach to quitting is fail less, and in my experience, the hard stop of like cold turkey didn't work for me because I'm a guy that you can't tell anything to. I'm a guy who does what he wants. So I'm not saying no to myself. I'm just saying, yes, you can drink once a year. So enjoy that once a year. And this is like 5 years, 7 years later after having this habit. And I've been sober for so long, I don't want to drink, and there's nothing in me that's like, oh man, I want to drink. And when I do, if I have these feelings of like, oh, I'm really thirsty, I get some kombucha, which is super tasty, or I drink a guru. And so I have eliminated alcohol from my life in that sense. Also, I want to be a good example for my kids, for my children, and I don't want them to grow up with alcoholic parents. Thankfully, Desiree doesn't drink at all. She used to run a bar with a previous relationship guy that she was with, and she's not into drinking. She's already drank, like myself, enough for one lifetime. So I have drank enough for one human's lifetime already in my, sport drinking days. And yeah, I'm never going back to that, to sport drinking, to partying. I'm never going back to any of that. So there's nothing in me that wants to drink, and I'm not like saying, no, Adam, you can't drink. I'm saying, go ahead, drink once a year, because having kids, they would understand. Oh yeah, Dad had one drink this year, or drank one time this year, but I'm not even doing that. So fail less and increase the quality of your alcohol and switch. So substitute as you're quitting. But every approach will be different, but that was how I quit drinking. When I moved out on my own at 17, we were drinking all the time. We had our fridge full of what was it? Black ice. It was like 6% beer, 7 when I was 17. Like, I started sport drinking like that in my teens, and I was a functioning alcoholic for a long time. I always hated my biological parents for their alcoholism, and I wound up seeing myself become them, and that and a few health scares that I had made me turn my life around. And here I am today. I've been vegan for almost 10 years, which I'll talk about in other videos. I've been sober for... depends on how you describe sobriety, right? Like, I feel like I've been sober from alcohol for 8 years, but if you count it from my last drink, then I definitely didn't drink last year at all. So you could say at least 2 years of being sober, but I don't look at it like that. I feel like I would allow myself one drink a year or one day of drinking a year at this point, but I don't even want to do that. So it's nothing religious. My adopted parents are Muslim, but I'm at the point where, go ahead, drink once a year, but I don't do that. So I'm not religiously telling myself not to do it. I don't feel like I'm going to go to hell when I drink, to say it bluntly. All that being said, be a good role model. Be a good example for your children. Quit drinking and figure out a way to do it. That's how I did it. That's honestly how I did it. Okay? I'm 41 now with all these years of sobriety behind me. And I started the whole process in my mid to late 20s of getting sober. I hope it doesn't take you that long. Follow me on Twitter at adamjosh.com. Take care. Bye-bye.